we're live. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for returning to the Don't IEP Alone podcast. If you haven't heard, we were on hiatus for a couple of years due to the pandemic, but now it's back by popular demand. And with me today is Dr. Elliott Jaffa. He is a child psychologist from the Arlington, Virginia area. For those of you not familiar with the East Coast, it's part of metropolitan Washington, D.C. So that's where he's from. Welcome, Dr. Jaffa. And you want to say a few words about yourself or say hi, introduce yourself?
I'm Elliott Jaffa. You summed it up beautifully. I'm fine. Unless anybody wants to know anything about me, they could call in, chat in, but I'm here ready to rock and roll.
Great. Dr. Jaffa has told me that he's previously appeared on Phil Donahue and Oprah, and I'm old enough to remember Phil Donahue and watching it after school. I am not as big as Oprah. I have my own little corner of the planet here, but I'm still honored to have you as a guest. So let's get started. You are a child behavioral psychologist. Sounds like you cover a lot of topics. So let's dig into people skills with our tweens and teens, and maybe not even talking about our disabled students, but I have a non-disabled child as well. When can you tell us, he's 14 and I get a lot of grunts and I get a lot of not even a grunt. I don't know what you want to call it. An answer, and when I ask them, how was school? What happened today? Things like that. When is it time, say, to intervene and kind of say, hey, this isn't acceptable? And when should you just say, you know what, this is normal 14-year-old boy behavior and he's going to come out of the other end fine?
Well, we could go back to when that child is 3 years old is a good time to start. But since we're at age 4, when he makes that grunt, let me ask you a question. Does he have a phone in his hand?
Sometimes yes, but not always, no.
Okay, couple things that you mentioned, which I'm real tough on my audience. So I hope they'll bear with me. The first thing is to mom and dad, we start with them in terms of the goal is to catch your kid being good. And any child comes home from school, first thing mom and dad says, it could be in the back of the SUV, it could be if they're walking to school, if the bus lets them off. What's the first question?
How was school?
How was school day? And what's the answer?
Fine.
Fine. Okay, there you go. Wrong question to ask. Now you're saying to yourself, well, tell me the right question to ask. Okay, so I like to tell stories. I don't like to talk at my audience, and I want to tell stories. So I have neighbors, two girls. One is probably 10 years old, and who's standing next to him is another neighbor who's a young teenage girl. So I said to the 10-year-old, tell me something that you didn't know this morning before you walked into school that you now know. And she gives me this, nothing. Give me a hard time. Okay, so then I turned to the teenager and I said, okay, you tell me something you learned in school today that you did not know this morning, but now you know. And she proceeds to tell me something. Then the other kids raising her hand saying, I can tell you something, I can tell you something. So that's a great thing to start with. Instead of how was school today? You know the answer you're going to get. It's going to be fine. So simply say, and make it a daily activity to say, you could do it just for one parent. You could do it for both parents. You can compare it with siblings, so on and so forth. But to say, what'd you learn today that you didn't know this morning? Was it the capital of Pennsylvania? Was it the name of the football team in San Francisco? Anything, there's a good place to start. The next thing I'm looking at is to catch the kid being good. That's when the child tells you that, you want to praise your child. And we don't praise physical appearance or I love yous. They don't count. It's got to be an observable, my tongue is tangled. It's got to be an observable behavior, which is something you could see or something you could hear. So, for example, I really like the way You made sure your seatbelt was fastened before we started to go home. I really like the way that you helped your sister off with her coat. Praise the behavior. Now, parents, for the most part, have a problem with, I guess it's the toughest language to learn. And I call that the language of the positive. You ever heard of that language, Lisa?
No, and I'm interested to hear because I do have, this same teen that I'm talking about is kind of, if I would say, tell me something you learned at school that you didn't know this morning, I can already predict that the answer is going to be nothing, because school is stupid and boring and I didn't learn anything. They don't teach us anything. It's boring. And I'm predicting that.
All right, let's start with the language of the positive. The language of the positive is answering a question without using the word no, not, or any contraction with N apostrophe T, like couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't, didn't. You with me?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question. If I ask you your name, what are you going to tell me?
Lisa Leitner.
Okay, you're going to tell me your name. So I'm going to ask you an easy question, but you have to answer it in the language of the positive. You cannot use the word no, not, isn't, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't, didn't. Now, most of the listeners are saying, okay, I got the message. Ask the darn question already, Elliott. Look at your hand. Hold your hand in front of hold it up. Look at your hand. Here's your question. Is your hand bleeding? Ain't that hard of a question, lady.
My hands are fine.
Exactly. My hand is fine. My hand is intact. My hand is perfectly all right. My hand is bloodless. But I asked you a question. How many times did the word no, 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 no pop into your head?
Several.
Several. So see how hard it is to do that? Now, let's you're in Philadelphia, right?
Correct.
All right. How's this sound? Is this a two-parent family?
Yes.
All right. What's your husband's first name?
Dan.
All right. How would you and Dan feel if I came over to your house tonight with a bag full of money?
Depends on what you're going to do with that money.
Well, you could win it. You could take it all away from me.
Okay, then we'd probably be pleased.
All you have to do is talk in the language of the positive. So here's the way it's going to work. I'm coming over to your house with a bag full of money, and I'm going to spend 3 hours there. And you have 2 children, is that correct?
Correct.
Every time you catch one of your children being good, that's praising your child, I'm going to give you a $1 bill. Every time you answer or talk to your child in the language of the negative with no, not, isn't, wouldn't, couldn't, don't do that, you shouldn't do that, you're going to give me a $1 bill.
Okay.
After 3 hours, who's going to come out ahead?
Well, if it's my first time trying this exercise, I'm going to say probably you.
Do you think I'll have enough money to go to Australia?
No.
Disney World?
See, I just did it.
Disney World?
Maybe.
See, you have to see. You caught yourself, didn't you?
Yes.
That's the key thing. Is that I'll usually I hear. I don't usually get a lot of Australia, but I hear a lot of you'll have enough money to go to Hawaii or Disney World or something like that. But it's hard and it requires practice. But turn it into a game with your child. So, for the most part, then my next question is: are you a good listener?
I think so.
Okay. Do you think most of your audience are good listeners?
I hope so.
Okay. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What color is this piece of paper?
It looks like it's white with black printing.
What color? What do cows drink?
Milk.
The cows in my backyard drink water. I don't know how far as you got in Philadelphia. So we just established, I don't know about the audience, but I just established that the hostess has a listening challenge. So there's things that you turn it into a game with your children. And the example I just did with the cows, whenever I do this with children, if I'm doing a presentation and it's parents, or sometimes it's parents and children there, or it's just in a school or educational institution with just children, within a few minutes, a hand goes up and a child asks, "You got cows?" That's what they pick up on. But again, I'm forming some basic rules with you and your audience, is to focus on the positive as hard as can be. I don't care if you never went to school at all in your life, or you have a PhD, to talk in the language of the positive, and it requires listening. It requires practice. And the key thing is to catch your child being good. Now you're telling me that your son's saying school is stupid and they don't teach me anything there.
Yeah, I get a lot of that. It's, why do I have to go? It's boring. I'm not learning anything. Or the other angle he takes is, we had to learn about the Pythagorean theorem today, and I'm never going to use that in real life. And why do I have to learn that?
You're absolutely right. But can you spell the word Pythagorean, or whatever it is? Flip it back.
I probably could. Yeah.
Flip it back to him. But ask him what he liked to learn in school. You don't like what they teach. You don't like reading. You don't like history. You don't like geography. Tell me what you like for them to teach. Keep asking him questions and just walk him through the maze. Well, I don't like to go to school. Okay, where would you rather go? I mean, I tell you, my mother's mantra, I'm an only child. So my mother's mantra was, do the best you can. If I was fretting over a test or fretting over a term paper in school, my mother would say, do the best you can. My father would say, quit school, go get a job. He would point. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. He would point and say, get a job at Bethlehem Steel, which is no longer in Baltimore, but it was a blue collar place of employment. And
my dad worked there.
He would just point and say, go get a job at Bethlehem Steel. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to finish the term paper. That was it. So again, there was a therapist in family systems therapy named Jay Haley, and he challenges the child by saying, quit school. Go to the principal, tell him you don't like it. You don't like the job that he or she is doing. How do I quit? And see what happens. But he'll look at you like, what are you, crazy? I'm not going into Miss Smith's office and saying that. Why not? You're telling me you don't like the way she teaches. Tell her what you want her to teach. The teachers. She's the boss of all those teachers. You don't like Pythagorean theory? I gotta come up with something. Einstein's relatively. No, that's not it either. But again, you have fun with your child, because you want your child to say, Mom, are you crazy? What are you, nuts? That's absurd. That's ridiculous. But again, no, it's not, because if it concerns you and you're not wanting to learn that, find out let the teacher know or let the principal know what you want to learn. So you want to keep that dialogue going. Because you started off by asking me a question about people skills, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you notice how many people skills I brought in? But it was like a ping pong game between you and your son.
I like that, and I like that you're encouraging self-advocacy, because I think too many parents want to snowplow these days and clear the path, and putting it on him to be his own self-advocate. I like that as well.
Well, let me tell you what I like to do. Every morning, I go to take my newspaper and go up to Panera and drink coffee and read the newspaper for a couple hours from cover to cover. That's I could read the newspaper at home and I could drink coffee at home. But when I see parents come in with children and they criticize the child. No, 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 don't do this, stop that, do that. Smoke's coming out of my ears. And there's times when most 99% of the time I'll keep it to myself. Occasionally I will say, would you like a suggestion? It's like getting permission first. Would you like a suggestion rather than using, and we can get into this, the two worst words in the English language. Remember, we're talking about the language of the positive. Let me give you the two worst words in the English language. You should.
Okay.
Did you personally make any major purchase recently in your household?
Mm, I can't think of, I
Just
not.
say yes.
I cannot think of any.
Just say yes.
Okay, yes.
Wait, what did you buy? Say something.
A car,
A car. What kind of car did you buy?
a Subaru.
Should have bought a Honda. You bought a watch. You shouldn't have bought a Rolex. You should have bought a Timex. See, you should. Nobody wants to be told what they should do, particularly your children.
You're right.
Ask them the question: where do your hands need to be? I don't know. Well, where are they now? Well, I'm just holding them out. Would you like to put them somewhere? Where's a place? Look, lower your eyes and take a look. And what do you see? Do you see your lap? Yeah. Put them on your lap. And the child may drop it. But again, keep asking them the questions.
Good. I like that. I do. I like that.
All right, where do you want to go next? Should we start going back to people skills?
Well, and I want to get your opinion. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s and, spent many a days after school coming home to an empty house, nothing but the television. And I remember, during that time that it was, the news media and experts were, TV, too much TV is going to ruin this generation, right? It was going to crush us and we wouldn't be productive members of society because we watch too much TV. Now, of course, in 2023, it's the phones. So do you think the phone thing is a real concern, or is it just the TV of the 70s? I feel like every generation has their thing. So do we need to be concerned, or because then I also feel hypocritical because I'll say, okay, that's enough time on your phone, but here you can watch TV. To me, that seems like real, hypocritical.
It's worse than TV.
Is it? Okay.
Now, don't get me started on phones. When here's my theory on phones. When I'm at a red light or a crosswalk and there's somebody walking across the street and they're looking at their phone, I believe the Department of Vehicles should give you points if you hit the person with your car. They give you safe driving points for driving safely if you have no accidents but I will not talk to people. I mean, I have a client who takes me to lunch to talk business, and she's looking at her phone or looking to see who's calling, and I'll say, "Excuse me, do you have a family member who is ill?" No. Are you is there an emergency possibly happening in your life? No. Is it possible you could put your phone away while we have lunch? And people say, you say that to a potential client? I said, yeah. I said, I'm never going to have a relationship with this person or take the gig or the consulting or whatever if they are controlled by their phone. If I leave my phone in the car, first of all, I don't even know how to use a phone. If you said text me, what's today? Tuesday, you might get the text on Friday or Saturday. I don't know how to do that stuff. I use it if you and I are meeting somewhere for lunch. I would say, Lisa, let me give you my cell phone number. If you're running late, give me a call. That's when I turn my phone on, because I live with my dog. The dog doesn't know about the phone. And again, it's now granted you have a family, you have kids to check on, you have, your mother has a doctor appointment, so on and so forth. Granted, there's times when to use the phone, but what you got to do is attach something educational to that phone. So you're saying, what do you mean something educational? Well, depending on the age of the child, there's a lot of fun activities. Like, how does today's child learn the capitals of states? They Google it.
Right.
What's the capital of Kentucky? They pick up their phone and Google it. Nope. They haven't learned this. How did you learn it in school? Some
Right.
way, shape, or form where you had a sheet of paper or a puzzle or something educational. It had 50 states and 50 names next to those states, which were the capitals. So again, the child can earn phone time based on learning something. I don't care what they want to learn. They want to learn the periodic table, fine, along with the Pythagorean theory or whatever. See, I like that. They're gonna, they can learn that whatever they want to. They want to learn how to clean their sneakers. It's on the internet. You got to earn. You got to back it up. Time on whatever. I can't think of a nice word for crap. Websites that they're visiting, whatever websites they're visiting, it's fine. But you back it up by learning something educational, and they could choose.
Okay. That sounds like a fair trade-off.
Now let's get back to people's skills.
Okay. Yeah, my son says I'm old-fashioned. I know in many ways.
Time out. I don't dye my hair this color. So when you say old-fashioned, I'm a little old-fashioner than you. Go ahead.
You might be, but things like, women first through a doorway, holding the door for women. I was brought up that when you sit at the dinner table at night, you don't start eating until everyone's served, and you don't get up until everyone's finished. To me, it was just basic manners that my grandmother taught me.
Okay, and I told you it was about asking questions. So you say to your child, that lady's going to be walking through that door. What can you do to help her? And he'll maybe run over and open up the door. What's that lady going to say?
Hopefully, thank you.
Exactly. Now, what do you have the golden opportunity to do? Catch your kid being good. I really like the way you open the door for that lady.
That's much better, because I like that, because I'm already hearing the negative language that I would use, which is don't be rude, go open that door for her, kind of thing.
Ask the question. Like here's a good example. I take my dog out every day at 3:15. Why 3:15? Because that's when the middle school and the high school in my neighborhood releases the children, and we're on the same bike path. So they're walking along, talking to either by themselves or with each other. Every kid I pass, I say 2 syllables, hello. What do they say back to me?
I was going to say, maybe you get a grunt.
Some of them, might say nothing. Most of them say nothing because they're looking at their phone. I know they could hear me through the ear buds, but that's okay, because I'm saying to myself, like, I can't believe this. How are they going to get a job or get into college years from now? But when I say hello, all I do is say hello, and I see that same kid 5 days a week. I'm like a cowboy. I'm going to break this. I'm going to break this horse. I was working on this one kid. It took 3 months before he would look at me and nod. Then we went to the next step where he said hello back. So one day I said to him, "Hey, you see me out here every day, right?" "Yes." I said, how come all of a sudden today you're saying hello to me, but since the last 5 months you haven't even said a word? And he and I became friends. I mean, I love talking to children, and immediately tell them I'm a psychologist, which they're impressed by, whether they know what a psychologist or doesn't. And if I'm taking too much time, they may be walking their dog. I said, when you get home, your mother's going to say, what took you so long? Let me give you my name and phone number. If your mother and father want to call me to show that, I am who I am, why, because I'm impressed that we had this conversation, your mom and dad are going to really appreciate it. And I have seen the kids with their parents, and I say, my name's Elliott. I'm the guy who talks to your son. And she says, oh, yeah, he talks about you all the time, which really makes me feel good. That says, I still got it. And
Yeah.
so this one kid and I are talking, and he was sharp as could be. And I said, when you tell your mother, here, you got my name, you got my phone number, you can tell her I'm a psychologist. Now, she might ask you if you had a bag of candy in your hand. So he starts laughing and says, you don't look like the type. So I didn't know if that was a compliment or an insult.
Good. Okay. Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? The thoughts is, I hope your audience puts to, can they rerun this?
Yes.
Okay. I want them to show it to the other parent, unless I doubt if a lot of both parents are watching this at the same time, but to say, hey, we got to start doing what this guy says, because our problem is not going to disappear with age. It's not going to disappear unless they take control to modify the behavior. So that's a challenge I'm leaving your audience with, is work on the language of the positive, work on asking your child questions, make them tell you, where do your hands need to be? I noticed you finished your dinner. Where do you need to take your plate? I don't know. Well, should you take it to your bedroom? No. Where should you take it? I don't know. You have to have all the patience in the world till you run out of rooms and finally say, how's the kitchen sound? Yeah, the kitchen. Great. Excellent. As if he got the first nine options wrong. Finally, we scored, and you praise that behavior rather than going, finally, it took you long enough to figure out. Plate goes to the kitchen, put it in. No, you're catching the kid being bad. You want to catch the kid being good. So I hope that your audience takes that away, and maybe if they like what they heard, they'll tell you, and you can invite me back again.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely will plan on it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I will send out for the folks listening, you can check the podcast listing, as well as it will be sent out in email and posted on Facebook, where to find Dr. Jaffa.